The October sun hung low in the Carolina sky, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. 3-year-old Emma sat cross-legged on the freshly cut grass of her grandmother's backyard in Charlotte, North Carolina, completely absorbed in her imaginary world. Her toy bunny, Mr. Whiskers, was having tea with her plastic dinosaur collection, a combination only a toddler's mind could dream up. Emma's curls bounced as she chatted animatedly with her toys, her voice a melodic stream of half-formed sentences and giggles that only made sense to her. "More tea, Mr. Whiskers. Oh, you want cookies too," she announced seriously, pouring invisible liquid from her bright pink teapot. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke from a neighbor's fireplace. It was the kind of perfect afternoon that made you forget winter was coming. Inside the house, Emma's mother, Lisa, stood at the kitchen counter, helping her mother-in-law prepare dinner. The phone rang, an unexpected call from Lisa's husband, who was deployed overseas with the army. Lisa's heart leaped. Rarely got opportunities to call, and she'd been waiting weeks to hear his voice. She glanced out the window at Emma, who was perfectly visible in the middle of the yard, safe within the white picket fence that enclosed the property. "Mom, can you watch Emma for just a minute?" Lisa called out, already reaching for her phone. "It's—" Her mother-in-law nodded from the stove where she was stirring a pot of soup. "Of course, honey, go talk to him. Emma's fine out there." Lisa stepped into the hallway, her heart racing with excitement as she answered the call. "Oh my God, I've missed you so much." Her voice cracked with emotion as she pressed the phone to her ear, moving toward the front of the house where the connection was better. She could hear the faint static of an international line, then her husband's familiar voice, warm and tired. "Hey, babe, I only have a few minutes, but I had to hear your voice." Lisa became completely engrossed in the conversation, asking rapid-fire questions about his safety, his upcoming leave, whether he'd received the care package she'd sent. The minutes ticked by 2, then 3, then 5. Time moved differently when you were talking to someone you loved who was thousands of miles away in a war zone. Meanwhile, in the backyard, something caught Emma's attention. A butterfly, bright orange with black patterns on its wings, landed on the fence post near the back gate. Emma gasped with delight, abandoning Mr. Whiskers and the dinosaurs immediately. "Pretty butterfly," she exclaimed, pushing herself to her feet with that clumsy toddler urgency that makes every movement look like a controlled fall. The butterfly took flight, drifting lazily toward the back gate. Emma followed, mesmerized, her little legs pumping as fast as they could carry her. The gate, which had opened earlier to let the family cat out, stood slightly ajar, just enough for a curious 3-year-old to push through. "Wait for me, butterfly," Emma called out, squeezing through the gap. The butterfly fluttered deeper into the woods that bordered the property, a dense forest that stretched for miles behind the suburban neighborhood. Emma didn't think about the woods being scary or dangerous. She only thought about the beautiful orange wings dancing just out of reach. Inside the house, stirred her soup, humming quietly to herself. She assumed Emma was still playing in the yard. Lisa was still on the phone in the front hallway, tears of joy streaming down her face as told her he might be home for Christmas. Neither woman realized that with each passing second, Emma was moving further and further away from safety. The butterfly led Emma past the first line of trees, then disappeared into the canopy above. Emma stopped, looking around in confusion. The beautiful bug was gone. For the first time, she noticed how different everything looked here. The trees were tall, so tall they seemed to touch the sky. Shadows stretched across the ground like long, dark fingers. Behind her, she could no longer see her grandmother's house. "Mommy," Emma called out, her voice small and uncertain. No answer came. She turned in a circle, trying to figure out which way she'd come from. But 3-year-olds don't have a strong sense of direction, and every direction looked the same. Just more trees, more shadows, more unfamiliar shapes. Back at the house, Lisa finally ended her call with wiping happy tears from her eyes. She walked back to the kitchen, her heart full of hope and love. "Mom, that was amazing. He might actually make it home for. She stopped mid-sentence, looking out the kitchen window. The backyard was empty. Mr. Whiskers lay abandoned on the grass, the toy teacups scattered around him. "Where's Emma?" Lisa asked, her voice suddenly sharp with concern. Looked up from her soup, confused. "What do you mean? She's right outside where you left her." "No, she's not. The yard is empty." Lisa's voice rose in pitch as she rushed to the back door and flung it open. "Emma, Emma, where are you?" Silence. Lisa ran into the yard, her eyes scanning every corner, behind the garden shed near the swing set by the rose bushes. "Emma!" she screamed, panic beginning to claw at her chest. That's when she saw it. The back gate was wide open, swinging slowly in the breeze. Beyond it, the dark forest loomed like an open mouth, ready to swallow everything in its path. Oh God, no." Lisa's legs buckled and she stumbled toward the gate. "Emma, baby, where are you?" Appeared behind her, her face draining of all color as she realized what had happened. "I'll call 911, she said, her voice shaking as she pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. Lisa stood at the edge of the forest, screaming her daughter's name over and over until her throat was raw. The woods offered no response, just the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a crow. Somewhere in that vast, dangerous wilderness, a 3-year-old girl was alone, scared and lost. The nightmare had begun, and the sun was already starting to set. The first police car arrived within 4 minutes of 911 call, its sirens piercing the quiet suburban evening. Officer Rachel stepped out of her patrol car, her expression already grave as she took in the scene. A hysterical mother at the edge of a dark forest, an elderly woman crying on the back porch, and an open gate that told a story no parent ever wanted to live through. Lisa was barely coherent. "She's out there. My baby is out there in those woods." Her voice was hoarse from screaming Emma's name. She'd already tried running into the forest herself, but the terrain had stopped her. Thick brambles, uneven ground, and the disorienting darkness beneath the canopy had forced her back. She felt utterly helpless, and that helplessness was transforming into raw panic. Officer approached Lisa with practiced calm, though her own heart was racing. She had a daughter Emma's age. "Ma'am, I need you to take a deep breath and tell me everything. How long has she been missing?" "I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, 15. Lisa's hands shook violently as she tried to remember. "I was on the phone with my husband. He's deployed in Afghanistan, and I just stepped inside for a few minutes. When I came back out, she was gone." Fresh tears streamed down her face. "She's only 3 years old. She's terrified of the dark. She won't survive out there." More sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Within minutes, the quiet street transformed into a command center. 3 more patrol cars arrived, followed by a fire department rescue unit. Neighbors began emerging from their houses, drawn by the commotion. When they learned a child was missing in the woods, they immediately volunteered to help search. Officer pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We have a missing child, female, 3 years old, last seen approximately 15 minutes ago. She's entered the forest behind 4782 Maple Grove Drive. We need additional units, search and rescue, and the K-9 unit. Alert the command post. This is a Code Adam situation." The radio crackled with responses. Help was coming from every direction. Lieutenant arrived to take command of the search operation. He was a 20-year veteran with silver hair and a no-nonsense demeanor that inspired confidence. He immediately began organizing volunteers into search teams, assigning each group a specific grid section of the forest. But even as he gave orders, his experienced eyes betrayed his concern. The woods behind this neighborhood were over 3,000 acres of dense, unforgiving terrain. Finding a small child before nightfall would be like finding a needle in a haystack, except this needle could move, hide, or fall into danger. "Listen up, everyone," his voice cut through the chaos. "We're looking for Emma, 3 years old, hair, wearing a pink princess dress. She's been missing for approximately 20 minutes. Time is critical. The temperature is dropping fast. We're expecting it to hit the low 40s tonight. We search in pairs, stay within shouting distance of each other, and report back every 15 minutes. Move out. The search teams fanned out into the forest, their flashlights creating dozens of thin beams that probed the darkness. Emma! Emma! Their voices echoed through the trees, overlapping into a desperate chorus that the forest seemed to absorb without response. Back at the house, a female officer sat with Lisa, trying to gather more information. Does Emma have any medical conditions? Any medication she needs? Lisa shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself. No, she's healthy, but Lisa's voice broke. 2 months ago, she was attacked by a neighbor's dog, a German shepherd that jumped a fence. It didn't bite her badly, just knocked her down and scared her terribly, but ever since then she's been petrified of dogs. She has nightmares about it. She won't go near any dog, not even small ones. The officer made notes, though she wasn't sure why this information would be relevant to finding a lost child. She couldn't have known how crucial this detail would become. As the minutes turned into an hour, then 90 minutes, the mood grew increasingly desperate. Volunteers had covered vast sections of the forest, but there was no sign of Emma. Some search areas had terrain so rough that grown men struggled to navigate it. How could a 3-year-old have made it through? Sat on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, quietly weeping. The guilt was crushing her. If only she'd watched more carefully. If only she'd checked on Emma sooner. If only she'd latched that gate. The if-onlys were endless and torturous. Lisa had moved past crying. She stood at the edge of the forest like a statue, her eyes fixed on the tree line, waiting, praying for her daughter to emerge. She'd tried calling back, but the call wouldn't go through. He had no idea his daughter was lost in the wilderness. That thought made everything feel even more unbearable. At 8:47 p.m., as the search entered its 3rd hour, Lieutenant made a call to Charlotte Police Headquarters. We need the K-9 unit. Get me Officer and Max. Now. The dispatcher responded immediately. Is off duty tonight, sir. He's at home. I don't care if he's on the moon. Tell him we have a 3-year-old lost in Crowder's mountain forest, temperature dropping into the 40s, and we've had no success with ground search. We need that dog, and we need him now. Copy that, Lieutenant. I'll contact him immediately. Turned back to the forest, his jaw tight. Somewhere in that darkness, a little girl was alone, cold, and probably terrified beyond imagination. He'd been in law enforcement for 2 decades and had worked dozens of missing child cases. He knew the statistics. He knew that every minute decreased the chances of a positive outcome. He knew that if they didn't find Emma soon, this beautiful October evening would turn into a tragedy that would haunt this community forever. But also knew one more thing. Max had never failed to find someone when he was on the trail. If anyone could bring Emma home alive, it was that dog and his handler. The real search was about to begin. Officer Jake was sitting on his living room couch, still in his civilian clothes, faded jeans and an old Army Ranger t-shirt, when his phone buzzed with the emergency call. He just finished a 12-hour shift and was looking forward to a quiet evening. Beside him on the couch, sprawled out like he owned the place, was Max, a 5-year-old German shepherd with intelligent brown eyes and a muscular build that commanded respect. Jake read the message on his screen and was on his feet instantly. Max, gear up. We've got a job. The dog's transformation was immediate. Max went from relaxed companion to focused working dog in seconds, his ears perking up, his entire body alert. He knew those words. He knew what they meant. Someone was lost and he was needed. Jake grabbed Max's search and rescue harness from the closet, a bright orange vest that identified him as a working K-9 unit. As he secured it around Max's chest, he spoke in a calm, measured tone. We've got a little girl out there, buddy, 3 years old. She's been missing for 3 hours in Crowder's mountain forest. Temperatures dropping. This is the real deal. Max's tail wagged once sharply, not playfully but with purpose. He understood the gravity in Jake's voice. Jake wasn't your average police officer. Before joining the Charlotte Police Department, he'd served 8 years as an Army Ranger, including 3 deployments in Afghanistan. He'd been an explosives detection handler there, working with military dogs to find IEDs buried in the desert sand. He'd seen firsthand how a well-trained dog could mean the difference between life and death. When he'd returned to civilian life, he couldn't imagine doing any other kind of police work. He joined the K-9 unit and spent 2 years training Max from a puppy into one of the most successful search and rescue dogs in North Carolina. Their record spoke for itself: 12 successful searches for missing persons in 3 years, 2 lost hikers in the Blue Ridge Mountains, an elderly man with dementia who'd wandered from his nursing home, a teenager who'd run away from home, a 6-year-old boy who'd fallen into a drainage pipe. Every single time Max had found them. Every single time families had been reunited. But tonight felt different. As Jake loaded Max into the back of his specially equipped police SUV, he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. A 3-year-old in below freezing temperatures wouldn't survive the night exposed to the elements. Hypothermia could set in within hours. If Emma had been injured in a fall, if she'd gotten trapped somewhere, if she'd encountered wildlife, any number of scenarios could turn this search into a recovery operation instead of a rescue. Jake shook off the dark thoughts and focused on the road. Negative thinking wouldn't help Emma. What would help her was Max's nose, a biological marvel that could detect scent particles at concentrations as low as 1 part per trillion. What would help her was Jake's training and experience. What would help her was their refusal to give up until they brought her home. The drive to Maple Grove Drive took 18 minutes, but Jake made it in 12, his emergency lights flashing the entire way. When he pulled up to the scene, it looked like a disaster area. Police vehicles lined both sides of the street, their red and blue lights painting everything in alternating colors. News vans had already arrived, their satellite dishes extended, cameras recording footage for the 11 o'clock broadcast. Dozens of volunteers milled around, some just returning from the forest looking exhausted and discouraged. Jake parked and immediately spotted Lieutenant coordinating near the command post, a folding table covered with maps, radios, and coffee cups. His face showed the strain of the last 3 hours. When he saw Jake and Max approaching, visible relief crossed his features. "Thank God, we need you out there now," gestured toward the forest. "We've had 40 volunteers searching for 3 hours with no results. The terrain is brutal, thick underbrush, multiple ravines, creeks, fallen trees. If that little girl made it even half a mile into those woods, it's a miracle she's still moving." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "Brief me on everything. I need every detail you have." Pulled out a photo on his phone, a recent picture of Emma smiling at the camera, her curls framing her cherubic face, her eyes bright with the innocent joy that only 3-year-olds possess. Jake studied the photo carefully, committing her face to memory. Emma, 3 years old, last seen in the backyard at approximately 5:30 p.m. She was wearing a pink princess dress with white flowers, white sneakers, and had a toy bunny with her that we found abandoned in the yard. She's small for her age, only about 32 pounds. No medical conditions, but consulted his notes. The mother mentioned she's terrified of dogs, was attacked by a neighbor's German Shepherd 2 months ago. Just scared her, no serious injuries, but she's been in therapy for it. Jake glanced down at Max, who was sitting at attention beside him, and felt a knot form in his stomach. If Emma was afraid of dogs, seeing a large German Shepherd in the dark forest might terrify her even more. She might run from them, hide, or freeze in fear, all reactions that would complicate the rescue. "Noted," Jake said quietly. "We'll handle it. I need something with her scent." Led him to where Lisa stood near the back gate, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red from crying. She was clutching a small pink blanket, Emma's favorite, according to the officer standing with her. "Mrs. This is Officer and Max," introduced them. "They're going to find your daughter." Lisa looked at Max, and for a moment fresh tears welled in her eyes. That's a German Shepherd." Emma is terrified of German shepherds. If she sees him, she'll run. She'll be too scared to come to him. Jake knelt down so he was at eye level with Lisa, his voice gentle but confident. "Ma'am, I understand your concern, but Max isn't just any dog. He's a trained search and rescue professional. He's found 12 missing people, including 2 children. His job isn't to chase or intimidate. His job is to locate and protect. When we find Emma, I'll make sure the introduction is calm and non-threatening. Right now, Max is the best chance we have to bring your daughter home before hypothermia sets in." Lisa's hands trembled as she held out Emma's blanket. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "please find my baby." Jake took the blanket and held it down for Max to smell. The dog's nose immediately went to work, his nostrils flaring as he processed the complex mixture of scent molecules. Emma's unique scent signature, composed of skin cells, oils, bacteria, and dozens of other biological markers that humans couldn't perceive, but that Max's 40 times more powerful sense of smell could detect and remember. Max inhaled deeply, his body going still as he concentrated. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then his head snapped up, his ears rotated forward, and his entire posture changed. He'd locked onto something. He pulled at his leash, straining toward the forest. Jake looked at and nodded. "He's got her scent, we're going in." As they approached the tree line, Jake activated his radio. "Command, this is K9 unit. Max has acquired the scent. We're entering the forest at the northwest corner of the property. Tracking begins now." He checked his watch. 9:15 p.m. Emma had been missing for nearly 4 hours. The temperature had dropped to 43 degrees and was still falling. Jake looked down at Max one more time. "Find her, boy. Bring Emma home." Max surged forward into the darkness, and the real hunt began. The forest swallowed them whole within seconds of crossing the tree line. Jake's high-powered flashlight cut through the darkness, but the beam only revealed how vast and impenetrable the woods truly were. Ancient oak and pine trees towered overhead, their branches forming a canopy so thick that even the moonlight couldn't penetrate. The undergrowth was dense, thorny bushes, fallen logs covered in moss, and tangled vines that seemed to reach out and grab at Jake's uniform with every step. Max moved with absolute certainty, his nose lowered to the ground, occasionally lifting to test the air currents. His tracking pattern was methodical, zigzagging slightly to stay on the scent cone, but always moving forward with purpose. Jake had learned to read Max's body language like a book. Right now, every signal told him the same thing. The scent trail was strong, and Emma had definitely come this way. "Command, K9 unit," Jake spoke into his radio, his breath coming harder as the terrain grew more challenging. "We're approximately 200 yards into the forest, heading northwest. Max is tracking confidently. Trail is consistent." Lieutenant's voice crackled back. "Copy that. How's the terrain?" Jake ducked under a low-hanging branch, nearly losing his footing on the uneven ground. "Rough. Really rough. I'm having trouble navigating it, and I'm a grown man with a flashlight. I don't know how a 3-year-old made it this far." But Emma had made it this far. The evidence was right there in Max's unwavering pursuit. What Jake didn't know, what nobody could have guessed, was that Emma's small size had actually worked in her advantage. Where adults had to push through thorny bushes and climb over obstacles, Emma had simply walked underneath and around them. Her child's perspective had shown her paths that were invisible to taller searchers. They'd been tracking for 20 minutes when Max suddenly stopped at the edge of a small creek. The water was only a few inches deep, but it was ice cold, fed by underground springs. Max waded in without hesitation, his nose working overtime. Jake followed, feeling the frigid water seep into his boots. On the other side of the creek, Max paused longer than usual, circling a small area repeatedly. Jake's heart sank. This was a behavior that meant Max had temporarily lost the scent trail. Water could disperse scent particles, making them harder to track. If Emma had walked through this creek for any distance, or if she'd crossed it multiple times, the trail could be compromised. "Come on, Max, find it. I know you can do this," Jake encouraged softly, giving the dog room to work. Max circled wider, his nose testing every direction. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. Jake forced himself to remain patient, though every instinct screamed at him to move faster, search harder. But rushing Max would only make things worse. The dog knew what he was doing. Then Max's head snapped up, his tail went rigid, and he lunged forward with renewed intensity. He'd found the scent trail again, this time heading due north, deeper into the forest. "Good boy, Max, good boy," Jake praised, relief flooding through him. They pressed on, the terrain becoming increasingly treacherous. Jake's flashlight revealed a landscape that looked primordial, massive boulders jutting from the earth, ravines that dropped away into darkness, and trees so old they must have been standing since before the Civil War. Every few minutes, Jake would call out, "Emma, Emma, can you hear me?" Only silence answered, broken occasionally by the hoot of an owl or the rustle of some small animal fleeing from their approach. Jake's radio crackled with updates from the command post. Other search teams were being repositioned based on Max's trajectory. Volunteers who'd searched the southern sections were being redirected north. Everyone was coordinating around Max now, because Max was the only one who actually knew where Emma had gone. After 45 minutes of tracking, Jake's legs were burning from the constant climbing and descending of the uneven terrain. His uniform was torn in 3 places from thorns and branches. Sweat dripped down his back despite the cold air, but Max showed no signs of fatigue. If anything, the dog's intensity had increased. His pace quickened, his body language becoming more excited. They were close. Then Max stopped abruptly at the edge of a steep ravine. Jake's flashlight beam swept down into the darkness below. It was at least a 20-foot drop, rocky and dangerous. Jake's stomach churned. Had Emma fallen down there? If she had, if she'd been lying injured at the bottom of that ravine for hours. But Max didn't try to descend. Instead, he turned sharply left, following the ridge line. Jake understood immediately. Emma hadn't fallen. She'd been smart enough or lucky enough to avoid the drop and had followed the safer path along the edge. "She's a survivor," Jake muttered to himself, newfound respect for the 3-year-old growing with each passing minute. This wasn't just luck. Emma had good instincts, even in her terror and confusion. They followed the ravine for another 10 minutes, Max's excitement building with every step. Jake could see it in the dog's gait, in the way his tail quivered, in how his ears rotated constantly, processing every sound. They were getting very close now. Then, carried on the cold night air, Jake heard something that made his blood run cold, and his heart leap simultaneously. A child's cry, faint, distant, but unmistakable. "Emma," Jake shouted, his voice booming through the forest. "Emma, can you hear me?" The crying stopped abruptly, then started again, louder this time, more frightened. Max barked, a sharp, urgent sound that he only made when he'd located his target. He strained against the leash, pulling Jake forward with surprising strength. Jake activated his radio as he ran, stumbling over roots and rocks in his haste. "Command, we've got audible contact, I can hear her. Max has located the target, we're closing in." His voice came back, crackling with emotion. "Copy that, what's your position?" Jake glanced at his GPS unit. Approximately 1.2 miles northwest of the starting point, near a ravine system. Stand by for confirmation. They burst through a thick patch of undergrowth, branches whipping at Jake's face. Max's barking became more insistent, more excited. The crying was much louder now, coming from somewhere just ahead. Then Jake's flashlight beam caught something that made him stop dead in his tracks. A flash of pink fabric, a small white sneaker, and there, wedged between 2 large boulders that formed a natural shelter, partially hidden by an overhanging rock ledge, was Emma. She was alive. But when the little girl saw Max, a large, barking German shepherd charging toward her in the darkness, her cries transformed into screams of pure terror. Emma's screams pierced the night air like shards of glass, raw and filled with primal fear. She pressed herself against the cold stone behind her, trying to make herself smaller, trying to disappear into the rock itself. Her tiny body was shaking violently, partly from the cold, partly from exhaustion, but mostly from the absolute terror of seeing the German shepherd coming toward her in the darkness. In her 3-year-old mind, this was the monster from her nightmares made real. The same kind of dog that had knocked her down 2 months ago, the one with the big teeth and loud bark that had haunted her dreams ever since. And now it had found her in the scariest place she'd ever been, in the dark, alone, and there was nowhere left to run. "No, no, go away," Emma shrieked, her voice breaking with hysteria. Jake's heart shattered at the sound. He immediately pulled back on Max's leash, stopping the dog in his tracks about 15 feet from Emma. This was the nightmare scenario he'd worried about, finding the child alive but too terrified to accept rescue. "Max, halt, sit," Jake commanded firmly. Max obeyed instantly, dropping into a sitting position, but his body remained tense with excitement. He'd found his target. He'd done his job. Every instinct in his highly trained body wanted to go to the child to complete the rescue. But his training was stronger than his instincts, and he held position, though a soft whine escaped his throat. Jake held up his hand in a calming gesture, though Emma probably couldn't see it clearly in the darkness. "Emma, it's okay. My name is Jake. I'm a police officer. Your mommy sent me to find you." He kept his voice soft, gentle, the same tone he'd used to approach a frightened animal. But Emma wasn't listening. She was hyperventilating, her small chest heaving with panicked breaths. "Thee is gonna hurt me. Emma, honey, listen to me." Jake took one small step forward and Emma screamed again. He immediately froze. This wasn't working. Every move he made toward her only increased her panic. And he couldn't blame her. From Emma's perspective, she'd been lost and alone for hours. It was dark and cold and scary, and now a strange man and a large dog had appeared out of nowhere. Jake's mind raced through his training, through every search and rescue scenario he'd studied. He'd never encountered a situation quite like this. Usually, lost children were relieved to see their rescuers. Usually, they ran toward help, not away from it. He activated his radio, speaking quietly. "Command, we've located Emma. She's alive and appears physically unharmed, but she's terrified of Max. She won't let us approach. I need advice here." There was a pause, then his voice came back. "Can you get close enough to grab her?" Jake assessed the situation. Emma was wedged between 2 boulders with only one way in or out, past him and Max. If he rushed her, she might try to squeeze deeper into the rocks and get stuck, or panic so badly she'd hurt herself. Negative. Any aggressive approach could make things worse. She's already in a state of panic. "What do you need?" asked. "Time," Jake said, "and maybe let me try something." He clicked off the radio and looked down at Max. The dog was still sitting obediently, his intelligent eyes looking up at Jake as if asking, "What now?" Jake had an idea. It was unconventional, probably not in any training manual, but it was the only thing he could think of. He unclipped Max's leash. Then Jake sat down on the cold ground, crossing his legs like he was at a casual picnic rather than on a desperate rescue mission. Max looked at him, confused by this unexpected behavior. "Max, down," Jake said softly. Max immediately dropped into a lying position, his belly against the ground. Emma's screaming had subsided into frightened whimpering. She was watching them now, trying to understand what was happening. Jake began speaking, his voice conversational and calm. "You know what, Emma? I think Max is tired. We've been walking through the woods for a really long time looking for you. He's probably sleepy." Jake stretched elaborately, yawning. "I'm pretty tired too. Mind if we rest here for a minute?" Emma didn't respond, but she wasn't screaming anymore. That was progress. Max is a good dog, Jake continued, reaching out to gently pet Max's head. The dog's tail wagged slightly, but he remained in his down position. He's never hurt anybody. That's not his job. His job is to find people who are lost and make sure they're safe, like you. He's big, Emma said, her voice tiny and trembling. He is big, Jake agreed. But you know what? The bigger the dog, the more love they have to give. Max loves kids. His favorite thing in the whole world is when children pet him and tell him he's a good boy. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see her in the beam of his flashlight now. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. Her princess dress was torn and muddy, and she was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering. She looked so small, so vulnerable, so completely exhausted. "I'm cold," Emma whispered. "I know you are, sweetheart. I bet you're really, really cold. I have a warm jacket and there are people waiting to take you home to your mommy. She's very worried about you. But first, we have to walk back through the woods together. Do you think you can do that?" Emma looked at Max, then back at Jake. "Will they come?" "Yes," Jake said honestly. "Max has to come because his job isn't finished until he knows you're safe with your family. But I promise you, Emma, I promise on everything I have, Max will not hurt you. He's not like the dog that scared you before." "How do you know about that dog?" Emma's eyes widened. "Your mommy told me. She told me you were very brave that day, and I bet you're brave now too." Emma was quiet again, considering this. Then she said something that surprised Jake. "Mr. Whiskers is still at Grandma's house. I left him." "Mr. Whiskers?" Jake asked gently. "My bunny. I was following a butterfly and I got lost and I couldn't find my way back and it got dark and I was scared and I found these rocks and I've been here forever and ever." The words tumbled out in a rush, her 3-year-old's conception of time making 4 hours feel like an eternity. "You did exactly the right thing," Jake told her. "When you're lost, you should stay in one place so people can find you. You were so smart, Emma. Your mommy is going to be so proud of you." "Is she mad at me?" Emma asked, her lip quivering. "No, baby, she's not mad. She just wants you home." Jake slowly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a granola bar. "Are you hungry?" Emma nodded vigorously. "If you come a little closer, I can give this to you. And I have water too." Emma looked at the granola bar, then at Max, then back at the granola bar. Hunger won out over fear. She took one tentative step forward, then another. She was still several feet away, but it was progress. That's when Max did something that Jake would never forget and couldn't have planned if he'd tried. The dog yawned, a huge, jaw-cracking yawn that showed all his teeth, and then laid his head down on his paws with an audible sigh, closing his eyes. It was the picture of complete non-threatening relaxation. He looked less like a police dog and more like an oversized puppy ready for a nap. Emma actually giggled. It was a small sound, quickly stifled, but it was there. "See," Jake said, smiling, "he's sleepy." Emma took another step closer, then another. She was within arm's reach now. Jake very slowly extended his hand with the granola bar. Emma reached out and took it, then quickly stepped back. She tore into the wrapper with shaking hands and began eating ravenously. While she ate, Jake spoke into his radio quietly. "Command, we're making progress. Stand by." Emma finished the granola bar in record time. Jake offered her his water bottle, and she drank deeply, some of it spilling down her chin. "Emma," Jake said gently, "I need to check if you're hurt anywhere. Can I come a little closer?" Emma looked at Max, who still had his head on his paws, appearing completely harmless. Then she looked at Jake and nodded slowly. Jake moved forward carefully, every motion deliberate and non-threatening. When he reached Emma, he knelt down and quickly assessed her. Scratches on her arms and legs, but nothing serious. Her hands were ice cold. Her core temperature was too low. She needed medical attention, but she was going to be okay. "All right, sweetheart, time to go home. I'm going to pick you up now." But as Jake reached for her, Emma did something that stunned him into absolute stillness. She looked past him at Max and said two words in a small, trembling voice. "Good boy." Time seemed to stop when those two words left Emma's lips. "Good boy." Jake froze, hardly daring to breathe. Max's ears perked up at the sound of Emma's voice, but he remained perfectly still, his head resting on his paws, as if he understood that this moment was delicate and precious. Emma took a small step toward Max, then another. Her movements were hesitant, uncertain, like a bird approaching breadcrumbs, ready to fly away at any sudden movement. Jake wanted to say something, to encourage her, but some instinct told him to stay absolutely silent and let this unfold naturally. "Good boy," Emma repeated, slightly louder this time. Her small hand extended, fingers trembling, reaching toward Max's head. Max's tail began to wag, slowly, gently, just a slight movement that brushed the ground. He lifted his head ever so slightly, and for the first time, Emma and Max made direct eye contact. Whatever passed between them in that moment was something ancient and profound, the connection between human and dog that had existed for thousands of years, transcending fear and trauma. Emma's hand made contact with Max's fur, her tiny fingers touching the top of his head. The dog remained motionless except for that gentle tail wag. Emma's expression transformed. The terror drained from her face, replaced by wonder. He's soft," she whispered, her voice filled with amazement as if she'd discovered something magical. "And warm." "He is," Jake said softly, finally daring to speak. "He's been keeping himself warm walking through the forest to find you." Emma took another step closer and placed both hands on Max's head now, petting him with the uncoordinated but enthusiastic movements typical of a 3-year-old. "Nice. Good." Max responded with the gentlest whine Jake had ever heard him make, a sound of pure contentment. Then, moving with careful deliberation, Max lifted one paw and placed it on the ground near Emma's feet. It was a gesture of friendship, of trust offered and received. That's when Emma did something that made Jake's eyes burn with sudden tears. She wrapped her small arms around Max's neck and buried her face in his fur, holding onto him like he was a giant stuffed animal. "Warm," she mumbled against his coat. "So warm." Jake quickly activated his radio, his voice thick with emotion. "Command, we've made contact. Emma is safe and unharmed. She's with Max now. We're ready for extraction." The radio exploded with cheers and exclamations of relief. Jake could hear his voice breaking as he responded, "Copy that. Outstanding work. Medical team is standing by. Can you carry her out?" "Affirmative," Jake replied, "but we might have a small complication." "What complication?" asked, concern creeping back into his voice. Jake looked at Emma, who was still clinging to Max, her entire body relaxing against the dog's warmth. "She doesn't want to let go of Max." There was a pause, then his voice came back, tinged with disbelief and something that might have been laughter. "Did you just say she doesn't want to let go of the dog? The same little girl who's terrified of dogs?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Jake confirmed, shaking his head in amazement at what he was witnessing. Jake knelt down beside Emma. "Sweetheart, we need to go home now. Your mommy is waiting for you. But it's a long walk through the woods and you're very tired. Will you let me carry you?" Emma pulled back from Max slightly, her arms still around his neck. "Can the come?" "Of course," Jake assured her. "Max will walk right beside us the whole way, I promise." "Okay," Emma agreed, finally releasing her grip on Max. Jake carefully lifted Emma into his arms, wrapping his jacket around her small body. She weighed almost nothing, and he could feel how cold she was despite Max's warmth. He needed to get her to the paramedics quickly. As they began the trek back through the forest, something remarkable happened. Emma kept reaching her hand down from Jake's arms, patting Max's head as he walked alongside them. "Good boy, Max. Good boy," she kept repeating, as if the words were a mantra that could keep the scary darkness at bay. Max responded by staying close, his body positioned protectively beside Jake, occasionally looking up at Emma as if checking on her. The bond between them was already forming, instant and inexplicable. Jake navigated the treacherous terrain carefully, his flashlight illuminating the path ahead. The journey that had taken over an hour to track now took 45 minutes to return, with Jake following the GPS coordinates back to the property. As they walked, Emma began to talk, a steady stream of 3-year-old consciousness that revealed what her ordeal had been like. I was chasing a butterfly and it flew away, and I couldn't find Mommy and it got dark and I was scared and there were strange noises, and I thought monsters were coming and I hid in the rocks and I was so cold and I thought nobody would find me ever. But we did find you, Jake reminded her gently. Max found you. He followed your scent all through the woods. Max is a hero, Emma declared with the absolute certainty that only a child can possess. Yes, he is, Jake agreed, his throat tight with emotion. Through the trees ahead, Jake could see lights, dozens of them. The rescue team, the ambulance, the police cars. They were almost home. As they emerged from the forest, the scene that greeted them was one Jake would remember for the rest of his life. At least 50 people were gathered in and around the backyard. Police officers, firefighters, paramedics, volunteers, and neighbors. News cameras were recording from behind the police tape. And standing at the very front, her face a mask of desperate hope and fear, was Lisa. The moment Lisa saw them, she screamed, a sound of pure joy and relief that cut through the night. Emma, oh my God, Emma. Emma lifted her head from Jake's shoulder and saw her mother. Mommy. Jake set Emma down and the little girl ran toward her mother on unsteady legs. Lisa dropped to her knees, arms outstretched, and Emma crashed into her embrace. Mother and daughter collapsed together, sobbing, Lisa's hands frantically checking Emma's face, her arms, her body, as if she couldn't quite believe her daughter was real and whole. My baby, my baby, my baby, Lisa chanted through her tears, holding Emma so tightly it seemed she'd never let go again. The gathered crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Hardened police officers wiped at their eyes. Strangers hugged each other. The paramedics stood ready with their equipment, but they waited, giving mother and daughter this moment. Jake stood back, Max at his side, watching the reunion. He felt's hand clap him on the shoulder. Hell of a job, hell of a job. But Jake was watching something else. Emma had pulled back from her mother and was looking around frantically. Where's Max? Where's my? Lisa looked confused, tears still streaming down her face. What, honey, what are you talking about? Max, the good boy who found me. Where is he? Emma was becoming agitated, looking around the crowd of people. Jake stepped forward, Max beside him. I'm right here, Emma. Emma's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. She pulled away from her mother and ran to Max, throwing her arms around his neck again. Thank you for finding me, Max. You're the best in the whole world. The entire crowd fell silent, stunned by what they were witnessing. Lisa's mouth fell open in shock. She looked at Jake with wide, disbelieving eyes. That's a German Shepherd. Emma is terrified of. Not anymore, Jake said quietly, smiling as he watched Emma shower Max with affection. Lisa stood up slowly, walking toward her daughter, and the dog she'd been so afraid of just hours ago. She watched as Emma petted Max, as the dog's tail wagged gently, as an unbreakable bond continued to form before everyone's eyes. I don't understand, Lisa whispered. How is this possible? Jake looked at Max, then at Emma, then back at Lisa. Sometimes, he said, the thing we fear most becomes the thing that saves us. And sometimes all it takes is 2 words, good boy, to change everything. Paramedics finally approached, their medical bags in hand, but even they seemed reluctant to interrupt the scene unfolding before them. Emma was still on the ground with Max, talking to him in that animated way children do when they've found a new best friend. You have big ears, Max, and your nose is cold. Are you hungry? I was really hungry, but Officer Jake gave me a granola bar. Do you like granola bars? Max responded to each question with patient attention, his tail wagging steadily, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. It was as if the dog understood that this little girl needed him, not just as a rescuer, but as living proof that not all big dogs were scary, that trust could be rebuilt, that fear could be overcome. Emma Sweetheart, one of the paramedics, a woman named Sarah with kind eyes and a gentle voice, knelt down beside them. My name is Sarah, and I need to check you over to make sure you're okay. Is that all right? Emma looked up, suddenly uncertain again, pressing herself closer to Max. Max can stay right here, Sarah assured her quickly. I just need to look at your arms and legs, check your temperature, things like that. Max can watch and make sure I do a good job. Would that be okay? Emma considered this, then nodded. Okay, but Max stays. Max stays, Sarah confirmed with a warm smile. Over the next 10 minutes, Sarah conducted a thorough examination while Emma kept one hand buried in Max's fur. The diagnosis was better than anyone had hoped: multiple superficial scratches and bruises, mild dehydration and early-stage hypothermia, but nothing that required hospitalization. Emma was incredibly lucky. A few more hours in those woods, and the outcome could have been tragically different. She's going to be fine, Sarah announced to Lisa, who had been hovering anxiously nearby. We'll get her warmed up, give her some fluids, and she should make a complete recovery. She's one tough little girl. Lisa knelt down beside Emma, tears still flowing freely. Baby, the nice paramedic says you need to go in the ambulance so they can warm you up and make sure you're completely okay. Can you do that for Mommy? Emma's bottom lip trembled. But what about Max? Jake stepped forward, having anticipated this question. Emma, Max and I need to go back to the police station. That's where we work, but I promise you something, we'll come visit you tomorrow. Would you like that? Promise? Emma asked, her eyes wide and serious. I promise, Jake said, holding out his pinky finger. Emma linked her tiny pinky with his, sealing the deal with the solemnity of a blood oath. Can I hug Max goodbye? Emma asked. Of course you can. Emma threw her arms around Max's neck one more time, squeezing tight. Thank you for saving me, Max. You're my hero, I love you. Max licked Emma's cheek gently, and she giggled, a sound of pure joy that made every person present smile through their tears. As the paramedics loaded Emma into the ambulance, with Lisa climbing in beside her, Emma pressed her face against the ambulance window, waving frantically at Max. The dog sat at attention, watching until the ambulance disappeared down the street, its lights flashing but its siren silent. The crowd began to disperse, volunteers heading home to their own families, officers returning to their normal patrols. But Jake noticed several people approaching him, their faces filled with emotion. Lieutenant was first. I've been in law enforcement for 23 years and I've never seen anything like what happened tonight. You and Max didn't just save that little girl's life, you healed something in her. That's beyond rescue work. I don't even have words for what that is. A woman Jake didn't know approached next, wiping tears from her eyes. Officer, I'm Jennifer. I live 3 houses down. My daughter was attacked by a dog last year and she's been terrified ever since. We've tried therapy, everything. Is there any way my daughter could meet Max? I think maybe what happened tonight could help her too. Jake looked down at Max, who gazed back at him with those intelligent brown eyes. Ma'am, I'd be honored to arrange that. Over the next hour, Jake gave statements, filled out reports, and answered questions from the media who'd been recording the entire event. The local news was already running the story with the headline, Miracle Rescue, K9 unit finds missing toddler, heals her fear of dogs. But Jake knew the truth. Max hadn't just found Emma. He'd given her back something that had been stolen from her, the ability to trust, to love, to see the good in creatures that had once terrified her. That was worth more than any successful search and rescue operation. It was nearly midnight when Jake and Max finally made it back to his SUV. As Jake opened the back door to let Max in, the dog paused and looked back at the forest, as if he could still sense Emma's presence there. "Yeah, buddy, I know," Jake said softly, scratching behind Max's ears. "She was special. They're all special, but she was something else." Jake's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. He opened it and found it was from Lisa. Someone at the scene must have given her his contact information. The message was simple but powerful. "Officer, I don't have the words to thank you and Max for what you did tonight. You brought my baby home, but more than that, you gave her back her courage. The hospital says she's doing great. She hasn't stopped talking about Max. She wants to know if she can have a dog now, specifically a German Shepherd. I never thought I'd hear those words from her. You and Max didn't just save her life. You changed it. Thank you will never be enough, but thank you. Lisa." Jake read the message 3 times, his vision blurring. He sent back a simple reply. "It was our honor. Max and I will see you tomorrow. Sleep well." As he drove home through the empty streets, Max asleep in the back, Jake reflected on the night's events. He'd been a K9 handler for 5 years, and Max had successfully completed 13 searches now. But tonight was different. Tonight wasn't just about finding someone lost. When Jake got home, he broke protocol and let Max sleep on the couch beside him instead of in his kennel. The dog deserved it. As Jake scratched Max's head, the dog let out a contented sigh. "You know what you did tonight, don't you?" Jake said quietly. "You showed a terrified little girl that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, that the things we fear can become the things we love. That trust can be rebuilt, no matter how broken it seems." Max's tail thumped against the couch cushion twice, as if in agreement. Jake's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Lieutenant. "News is going viral. Emma's story is everywhere. You're going to be famous. More importantly, the K9 unit is getting recognition it deserves. The city council is already talking about expanding funding. One little girl saying, 'Good boy,' might just change everything for working dogs across the state." Jake smiled and set his phone down. He wasn't interested in fame, but if Emma's story helped people understand the incredible value of K9 units, the bond between dogs and humans, and the healing power of trust, that would be worth everything. "Get some rest, Max," Jake said, turning off the lights. "Something tells me tomorrow is going to be a very big day." In a hospital room across town, Emma was finally warm, safe, and drifting off to sleep in her mother's arms. Her last words before sleep claimed her were whispered softly. "Mommy, when can I see Max again?" Lisa kissed her daughter's forehead, her own tears still flowing. "Soon, baby, very soon." And she meant it, because sometimes the universe sends exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, even if it comes in a form you never expected, with 4 legs and a wagging tail. 3 weeks had passed since that October night, but the story refused to fade. If anything, it grew larger with each passing day. Emma's rescue had become national news, featured on morning talk shows, shared millions of times on social media, and picked up by news outlets from coast to coast. But it wasn't just the successful rescue that captured people's hearts, it was the transformation. The 2 words that changed everything: "Good boy." Jake found himself doing interviews he'd never imagined, speaking to reporters about K9 training, search and rescue operations, and the incredible capabilities of working dogs. But he always made sure to redirect the spotlight where it belonged, on Max and on Emma's courage. The Charlotte Police Department was overwhelmed with donations to their K9 unit. Checks arrived from across the country, along with letters from people sharing their own stories of rescue, healing, and the bonds between humans and dogs. The city council, moved by the public response, approved funding for 3 additional K9 teams. Emma's story was literally saving future lives. But the real story, the part that hadn't made the initial news reports, came out during an interview Lisa gave to a local journalist named Owens. Had been covering the story from the beginning and had built a rapport with the family. When she sat down with Lisa in the living room, the truth finally emerged. "There's something people don't know," Lisa said, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, her eyes distant with memory. "Something I didn't even tell the police during the search because I was so panicked. But it's the most important part of Emma's story." Leaned forward, her recorder running. "What is it?" Lisa took a deep breath. 2 months before Emma went missing, she was attacked by a neighbor's German Shepherd. The dog jumped the fence while Emma was playing in our yard. It didn't bite her, thank God, but it knocked her down, stood over her, barking. She was traumatized. We started therapy immediately. She had nightmares every night. She would scream if she even saw a dog across the street, any dog, any size. His eyes widened as the implications sank in. "So when Emma was lost in those woods." "I was terrified for so many reasons," Lisa continued, her voice shaking. "The cold, the darkness, the wild animals, the possibility of her falling and getting hurt. But I was also terrified because I knew if they sent a search dog, if a German Shepherd found my daughter, she would run. She would be so scared she might run deeper into the woods, away from help. I thought about telling the officers, but everything happened so fast, and I didn't want to slow down the search. I just prayed they'd find her before she saw any dogs." "But Max found her," said softly. "Max found her," Lisa confirmed, tears streaming down her face now. "And somehow, I still don't understand how, my daughter, who had been terrified of dogs for 2 months, who woke up screaming from nightmares about being attacked, looked at that German Shepherd in the dark forest and said, 'Good boy.' She wasn't just saved that night. She was healed." The interview aired 2 days later and exploded across social media. People were stunned. Parents of children with phobias reached out, asking how Emma had overcome her fear. Dog trainers and animal behaviorists analyzed what Max had done differently. Therapists discussed the psychological implications of trauma being healed in the presence of the very thing that caused it. Dr. Martinez, a child psychologist who had been working with Emma since the original attack, appeared on a podcast to discuss the case. "What happened to Emma in those woods is extraordinarily rare," she explained. "When someone experiences trauma, their brain creates powerful associations. In Emma's case, German Shepherd equals danger. But that night, Emma's brain was forced to create a new association. German Shepherd equals rescue, warmth, safety. Max didn't just find Emma. His gentleness, his patience, his intuitive understanding of her fear, all of it worked together to literally rewire her trauma response. It's one of the most remarkable cases of spontaneous healing I've ever encountered." The Charlotte Police Department arranged a special ceremony 4 weeks after the rescue. It was held at the police station, and the crowd was enormous: press, city officials, community members, and dozens of children whose parents hoped that meeting Max might help heal their own fears. Emma arrived with her family, wearing a new pink dress and clutching something she'd made herself. A medal fashioned from pink construction paper, cut into the shape of a bone, with "Hero Max" written in crayon across the front. When Jake and Max entered the room, Emma's face lit up like fireworks. She ran to them, throwing her arms around Max's neck in a greeting that had become their signature. Max's tail wagged furiously, and he licked Emma's face, making her dissolve into giggles. "I missed you, Max," Emma exclaimed. "I've been telling everyone about you, you're famous." The ceremony was emotional from start to finish. The police chief presented Max with an official commendation, the K9 Unit Medal of Valor. But everyone agreed that the real honor came when Emma stood on a small platform, her hand resting on Max's head, and presented him with her handmade medal. "This is for Max," Emma announced in her clear 3-year-old voice, speaking into a microphone that had been lowered to her height. "Because he's the bravest, kindest, best in the whole world. He found me when I was lost and scared, and he helped me not be afraid anymore. Max is my hero." The crowd erupted in applause. Grown men wiped tears from their eyes. Max sat perfectly still, his new paper medal hanging from his collar alongside his official commendation, as if he understood the significance of both. But the ceremony had one more surprise. Lisa approached the podium, Emma beside her. "Our family wants to do something," Lisa announced. "We've established the Max and Emma Foundation. Its mission is to fund K-9 units, support search and rescue operations, and provide therapy animals for children dealing with trauma and phobias. Because what Max did for Emma, he can do for others." The Foundation's first initiative was partnering with schools to bring trained therapy dogs to children with anxiety and phobias. The second was providing grants to police departments in rural areas to establish their own K-9 units. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country. In the months that followed, Emma became a different child. The nightmares stopped. Her therapy sessions showed remarkable progress. She asked for and received a German Shepherd puppy for her 4th birthday, a female she named after her hero. She began visiting schools with Jake and Max, helping other children overcome their fear of dogs. 1 year after the rescue, Jake received a letter from a mother in Oregon whose daughter had been bitten by a dog and refused to leave the house. She'd seen Emma's story on the news and had shown it to her daughter repeatedly. Inspired by Emma's courage, the little girl had finally agreed to meet a therapy dog. The meeting had gone well. Healing had begun. "You see," Jake said to Max as he read the letter aloud. One little girl saying "good boy" in the dark woods started a ripple that's spreading across the entire country. Max's tail thumped against the floor, and Jake could swear the dog was smiling. The truth that everyone needed, the truth that Emma's story revealed, wasn't just about a successful rescue. It was about the transformative power of compassion, the healing that happens when trust is offered and received, and the extraordinary capacity of both humans and animals to overcome trauma through connection. Emma had been lost in the woods for 4 hours, but she'd found something there that she'd carried back with her: courage, resilience, and an unbreakable bond with a hero named Max. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change the world. 2 words spoken in darkness, a gentle dog with an understanding heart, and a little girl brave enough to face her deepest fear. "Good boy," Emma had said. And in saying those words, she'd reminded everyone that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear fur, have 4 legs, and possess the kind of love that can heal even the deepest wounds. Max had saved Emma's life, but in truth, they had saved each other. And their story would continue to save others for years to come, proving that in our darkest moments, hope often arrives in the most unexpected forms, with a wagging tail and a heart full of unconditional love. The end of their story was really just the beginning.